So I've set up a Miro board for this session. So imagine if you go into a classroom before a session, and this is something that I used to do a lot in teaching. Okay, so if we could get webcams off, thanks, and we're just going to focus on the screen share. Something I used to do quite a lot before teaching would be to go into a room. I always tried to get rooms that have big whiteboards. Now, increasingly, our spaces don't even have whiteboards. Faculty of Arts building, a lot of the rooms don't actually have whiteboards at all. They've got big screens, big digital screens instead. So I used to like going into a classroom before a session and mapping out the whole session on the whiteboard. So I'd build a structure and start putting content on there. Maybe I'd take some printouts and some blue tack and put it on the board and actually get the students working together on the whiteboard in the sessions with spaces in that layout for them to be doing activities. And, you know, for me, in what I teach, so I teach design methods, design research, but also technology related stuff. And in the past, I've taught philosophy, cognitive science, artificial intelligence, all kinds of stuff like that. So quite a broad range of teaching. And I really like that very engaging approach where I'm able to show the structure of what we're doing to the students. And we've got a kind of scaffolding, so a very important word in teaching, scaffolding. And there are bits that I've sort of very heavily populated and other bits where I've left blank for us to do the activities in. Increasingly, that's hard. Okay, so increasingly, we don't even have whiteboards in rooms, or the whiteboards aren't really big enough. I was kind of lucky sometimes to get a really big whiteboard because pens run out and all the logistics are difficult. But also, you've got to turn up to the room well before to do that kind of layout. Steve Lockwood there mentioned stuff they're doing in the library. I used to use the teaching grid, big whiteboards, and also the opportunity to get in there and occupy the space and build my structure on the whiteboards for the students beforehand. That's really rare to get that opportunity. Plus, at the end of the session, you've got to tear it all down again, erase the whiteboard, get rid of all the stuff you've blue tacked onto the board because somebody else is coming in to use the room. So my teaching approach, my natural way of doing things, which is around this kind of very structured whiteboard kind of approach, never really had much of an opportunity to really do that very effectively. Miro gives us that. Okay, so Miro is a collaborative whiteboard application that was developed actually for design consultancy industries. It was developed by design consultants because they had a gap. They didn't have this kind of thing. Design consultancy works in very much that way, about working with clients or communities of people and setting out a structure, but then letting them focus in on bits of that structure to work within there and to contribute and to do collaborative work in that space. So Miro evolved out of that need. This session, we're going to do a little activity right at the start. We'll get onto that in just a second, find a little bit out about the background of Miro and how you can access it at the university, how you can get a free license as a teacher, and what the limits of that are. There's not many limits, actually. Then we're going to have a look at some applications of it. So you can see on this board here, I've laid out the board for the session. The pink bits, the intro bits. The blue bits are the kind of main parts of the meat of what we're going to do there, which is to have a look at some examples. I've been using Miro in teaching now for a year and increasingly intensively using it. And the students absolutely love it. It's gone really well. So I've got some really great examples there. And also, the fourth blue frame along the right there has got some examples of some sort of project development, design work, management, project management stuff I've been doing with Miro as well. So we'll go and look in depth at some applications of it, and hopefully that's going to inspire you to think about how you might use this in your teaching and other activities. And then we're going to have to be fast to get through this. The green line of so I should actually be moving my little this green line over here is going to be a whiz through hands-on some of the techniques, some of the tools, some of the things you need to know to use Miro. I have to say though that everybody I've used it with has just picked it up and just used it intuitively. They're not necessarily making the most of it, so we're going to sort of have some hints and tips in there to help you make the most of it. But actually, it seems to be incredibly easy to use. The reason for that is it's been designed by people who are good at design, but also who have to use this with real people all the time. So it's not designed by software engineers or anything like that. These, it's designed by designers who do collaborative designing. Okay, so just going to show you the structure of the board here. So this is a Miro board, and actually one of the first things you need to know about Miro is it's zoomable. So you can see that the area of the board, it's not infinitely zoomable, but it's pretty big. It's like having a massive expandable whiteboard in your classroom. So you can see I've zoomed all the way out. I'm using zooming on the trackpad on my laptop. There is also I did that wrong. I've just zoomed all the way out. There's a little zoom control you can get on the right hand side here, and also a little map of the entire space. Okay, so zooming in and out. You can use if you're on Windows, Control plus Control minus to zoom in and out, or on Mac it's Command plus Command minus. So zooming in and out is a sort of key thing here. But I've also got done something else here. It's actually a key thing that I don't suppose somebody could just mute their mic there. Hearing a lot of noise. So a key thing that a lot of people who come to Miro without having a decent introduction will miss is frames. Frames are the key to this. Okay, so you can see that I've laid out this board. Now I've done it so that there's plenty of more space for expansion. And when we're teaching, so this is my kind of layout for what I think we're going to do in the teaching. Actually, I've discovered that having plenty of space for students to go off and do stuff in a more ad hoc, emergent way is really useful. So, but I've laid out this board as a series of frames, and I've arranged those frames in an order. I've color coded them as well, so you can change the background color of frames, and I put little titles on the left hand there for each of the sections of the module. So structure really matters. You can use Miro without using frames and without creating structure, but actually it really works best if you think about the structure of the things you're doing. So you may have sometimes in design and project work, I will start off without much of a structure and then stop, stand back and try to create a structure around what I'm doing. So in that case, the structure is kind of emerging from what I'm doing. Now, when I'm using this in learning design, that's also how I work. Often I don't start with a structure and I'm kind of getting stuff down there, and then I'm organizing it into the structures that you can see here. So each one of those colored boxes and the white ones at the bottom are frames. We'll get onto the details of frames in the hands-on bit later on, but I just want to point out bottom left-hand corner down here. Okay, so there's a little toolbar here. There's a few toolbars scattered around. This little toolbar down here has a couple of useful things. One is a thing that looks like an old-fashioned easel. That's a present mode, so you can actually do it like a PowerPoint where you're kind of going from frame to frame in a presentation. I don't use that much. What I do is this left-hand one here, which brings up a list of all the frames, and you can see them there. And you can reorder that list like this, up and down. But also you can, so the order I've got is as it appears on the screen, sort of reading from left to right and going down. I can jump to any of these frames by clicking on that and it whizzes to it. Okay, so it's focused on that frame. Then I can move to the next frame and we can move through. So actually what I'll do now is just what I do with students when I'm introducing this at the start of a session, just go through what we're going to be doing. So we have an activity you're all going to be doing in a minute called Say Hello, where we're just going to introduce ourselves and who you are, what you're trying to do or improve in teaching and learning, why you might use Miro. Then I've got a frame with some information about Miro. Then we've got our first learning design that we're going to look at, which is the Skyways to Success design activity. Then another, which is an entire module that we've just recently run in Miro, and then a module that I'm constructing and planning in Miro, ready to run in January. There's a frame with some ideas on project design and management things you can do in Miro. And then we go on to the hands-on, which is this green layer. So we'll go through those steps. in detail. And there's a couple of play areas which we might get time to have a go at just filling with stuff to try out things. Okay, so I'm just going to hide that away. Right, so I did post into the chat on Teams. I should say typically we're using this with Teams, so we're in a Teams session and collaborating on a board at the same time in our modules. And when we're doing this on campus, hopefully we're going to get enough students to be bringing in laptops or even iPads. Doesn't really work so well on a mobile phone, so that we can be doing this in class as well. And actually that makes an interesting way of doing hybrid. So you might have students at home who are collaborating on the board at the same time. That works really nicely. So now I've got a Miro account. We'll get on to how you get a Miro account later on. You don't need a Miro account to be invited onto a board to participate. All that you need to do, there's a share button up here. So I've got a Miro account. I've created a board and I've created a link to share it. And the link actually I've given you goes straight to this board here, Say Hello. Okay. And what we're going to want to do in Say Hello is, so you see I've put an example there. There's a couple of questions for you. Who are you? What are you trying to do, improve in your teaching and learning? So introduce yourself here with a photo and some stickies, and you can copy and paste images into the frame. So you can get a photo from the web, copy it and paste it directly into Miro. That also works on the browser version, which I was really surprised by.
Rob, do we need, sorry to interrupt, Rob, do we need the link?
I'll do that again in just a second. Yep.
Thank you. And password.
I'll send you the link and password again in just a second once I've just finished saying what you need to do. So what I'd like you to do is to go into this frame. I'll put a bunch of stickies. So this is a sticky, what do they call it? A pads, sticky pads. Which is there's a template for putting these in, and just create one of these for yourself. Okay, on the board. Try to put it somewhere where it's not going to kind of overlap. We've got quite a few people in here, and I'm going to run a timer on this as well. So the timer is down there. So a little timer button, and I've chosen some music which is up-tempo funk. We're going to have 5 minutes to do this. Maybe we need less. Let's go for 4 minutes. To do it really fast. Okay, so you need the link again. What I'm going to do is actually give you the link directly to that frame. So copy the link to the frame, paste that in, and you're going to need a password, and the password is let me edit. You should be able to click on that link. If you haven't got the Miro application installed, you can just operate it in the web browser. And it works pretty well in the web browser. I can see people getting on there already. I'm just going to actually enable. So, whoa, there's loads of people swarming around. So, I'll just, if you're still looking at my my feed here, just there is a button that you can click that shows people's cursors. So when I'm teaching and I've got groups of students doing stuff, they might be in breakout rooms. They're off doing things on the board. I can see all the activity and I can sit there as a teacher and go, fantastic. The students are really getting into this. And I can see that happening now, which is brilliant. Everybody okay with that? I can see loads of activity. Now you might notice on the cursors that most people, because they've just joined this as a guest without identifying themselves, have got names like visiting muralist and visiting writer and just randomly created names. So I can't really tell who's who. But if they've got an account in Miro and they're using that, you can see the person's name. So I can see Jess moving around pretty frantically there. Ian's all over the place as well. Yeah, Jim, go for it, Jim. Jim's got his photo on there. Fantastic. This is exactly the experience we have with the students when we're doing stuff in Miro. It's brilliant. So, you know, they might as well. Another advantage here is if you've got a whiteboard in a classroom, they're fighting for space to get onto that whiteboard and put stuff on there. Whereas in this case, people, there's kind of no bumping into people, apart from the fact that some people need to resize their Post-it notes. So One thing you can do is grab Post-it notes and just shrink it down so we can fit more into the frame. As I said, the frames, it's infinitely zoomable. So within a frame, you can zoom right in and get loads of detail on there. Start the timer.
So at this point, I started the timer, which you can see at the bottom of the screen, and selected some music to play, and we completed the exercise.
Okay, so fantastic work. That was really fast work there, and you can see how quickly you can get into this and how intuitive, just for the kind of basic stuff in a well set up board. Now, this is pretty much freeform, the structure we've got here. You know, typically for workshop activity, I might set up, as you'll see when we look at the examples, a much more structured kind of layout to the frame and the activity. I could, for example, one of the things we do is kind of have good one end, bad the other, and you kind of, you know, rating things, putting examples onto the board between good and bad. Use your imagination. There's so many different structures. Okay, so as we need to whiz on, you can come back to this later on and do a little bit. But if you could just stop that activity now and okay, come on back to my screen so you can see me on my shared screen. And I'm going to jump to the next frame, which is about Miro. Oh, by the way, could you hear the music that was playing with the timer?
Yes.
Yeah, it's quite neat, this is. So the music's not playing through my microphone and through Teams. I've switched my microphone off for that. It's playing in sync on your computer. Okay, with the same music, and I'm in control from the board, which I think is great fun. There's actually not. Oh no, somebody's whacked a great big notelet in the way. That does happen. So it takes a while for people to get used to this. One thing I've done is the content, much of the content on this board is double locked, so you can't move it, which is an important thing. I'll show you how to do that because you don't want your students accidentally moving stuff around while you're working on it. Yeah, the music's a bit limited, but it's fun. Okay, so let's go for about Miro. Just some background. So it's an online cloud system. They call it online whiteboard for easy collaboration. You can see that it's actually quite a lot more than a whiteboard. You can use it as a traditional whiteboard. If you've got some kind of input device, I've got an Apple Pencil, and sometimes I put this onto my iPad and I will actually draw straight onto the Miro board. I don't personally like that, so I'm not very good with the Apple Pencil at all. So I don't tend to use it in that way, but you can do. So it's actually about all of the different types of content and the structure that you can put on there and how you can interrelate things in the space. So it's that kind of whiteboard. Of course, it's more like a design board because that's the world it comes from. It's online, so stuff exists in the cloud, and then you can access it on pretty much any device. It's collaborative, as I've said. You can create a board and invite anybody in to collaborate on the board. You can set a password on it as well. Multimedia, we can put video, files, documents, PDFs embed beautifully into this. Images, obviously. Anything that's got an iframe like YouTube or SoundCloud, you can embed into the board. I'll show you some examples of that. Template based. So this is really one of for teaching, this is astonishingly important. Any structure that you create in Miro, you can turn into a template, which means you can reuse that structure, or you can create an entire board, say for a module, and then turn it into a template and create a new copy of it for when you're teaching the following year. It's absolutely brilliant. There's also thousands of templates that other people have provided, some of them extremely professional. And there's templates for most of the kind of diagram models and all kinds of stuff that you might want to use, mind maps and all that stuff. It's just in there already. So template based, almost unlimited in size. You saw how we could zoom right out, zoom right back in. Now, you can use it. You've probably seen there's a desktop application, which I use all the time. I don't use the browser-based version, really. There's a mobile app for phones and tablets, but the screens really are too small for that. It's okay if you want to just access a little bit and do something on the move. And of course, it works in the web browser, and the web browser-based experience, which I'm guessing quite a lot of you are using right now, is exactly the same as the desktop application. Just the desktop application, probably a little bit faster, a little bit more efficient. One piece of advice, one constraint I would say is that it works best if you've got a large screen. So because I do this stuff all the time at home, I've got I don't know what it is, a 28-inch 4K really very high definition screen for doing this on. Doing it on a laptop screen is a bit constraining, but frankly, you know, anybody ask me what's the best technology I could get for teaching, my answer is always get a big screen. They're not so expensive now, and it just transforms your productivity. So doing this on a big screen helps. We've got big screens that you can use in classrooms as well for doing this on. Higher definition, the better. So Miro, as I said earlier, has become one of the main tools. It's hugely popular in the whole world of design, consultancy, innovation, creative industries. It's international. And as I said, it was created by people who actually do this stuff all the time. So that's why it's so good. Applications that are created by people who use them for real are always the best. Link at the top here to how you can get a free copy of Miro. So if you want to start setting up your own boards as a teacher, you can get an unlimited copy. There's just a few really advanced features that aren't included in that. So you get a license, you have to apply for the license, apply today, and that's permanent. For students, they can apply for it and they get it for 2 years. I'm not sure why 2 years is the limitation. That's a bit annoying. But students don't need a license to participate in a board because you can share a link to the board and they can come in as a guest. It has been cleared for use at Warwick by the information security process. The business school sorted that out for us quite some time ago, which is nice of them to get on with that and do it for us. So it's ready to use now. Just going to pause there. Any questions about accessing using software or anything like that before I whiz on to some examples? How do we download the app? No, it's not on the software center, so it's not officially supported by IT services. They won't give you any help with it, and they won't install it on an IT services computer unless you ask them, which I'm sure they probably would if you asked them. So you may, if you can't get it installed and you can't use the app, then using the web browser version is almost just as good. Okay. Right. Brilliant. Thanks, Steve's just posted into the chat there a link to downloads. Zooming in and out, just to reiterate. So I'm on my trackpad, I'm using some gestures, Mac gestures to zoom in and out like that. Actually doing it 2 fingers like that. Control plus Control minus on a Windows keyboard, or Command plus Command minus on a Mac keyboard would also do it. Plus there's the little map thing in the bottom right hand corner. Okay, so I'm going to move on to some examples now of using this in teaching. How are we doing for time? Yeah, I'm going to whiz through these really quickly because you don't need to see the details. Really, it's about the structure and the approach. I'll just zoom out again to show you where we are on the board. So in the applications stream, now that's second layer down on the blue frames. When I'm using it at this speed, so I'm zooming in and out and moving around the board quite a lot, wouldn't be doing that in teaching. So a lot slower and a lot more calm. But doing quite a lot of zooming out to show people the big picture and show them where we are. So we're on this applications bit here, and we're going to have a look at the first example. So this is the first time I used it in teaching, and it was with an undergraduate course that Bo Kellerstein and I lead in IATL. It's an interdisciplinary one for second year and third year undergraduates from all over the university, and we get them from all departments. Students who've no experience of working in this way, really, usually, so no experience of design or creative industries. So it's all very new to them, but they pick it up really fast. And last running of this, we started by running what we call a design challenge. So this was a kind of fictional design challenge. We wanted them to learn about collaborative techniques and design techniques and doing things in a design consultancy kind of way. So this is a kind of fairly realistic thing. We want them to tackle difficult problems using these techniques. The difficult problem we set up here, the challenge was, so we're looking into the future, 2023. Now, I structured the board with 3 frames at the top here that set out the challenge for the students. So this is the kind of scenario case, whatever you want to call it. And the idea was in 2023, we've got chronic overcrowding at the university and climate change is causing constant flooding. Okay, so got some images and some text in that frame just there for the students to read. Now actually introduce this in class, in teams, with all the students together, going through the frames one by one using that present mode. We then had the next frame. The Vice Chancellor has had a bright idea, as they do, which is, hey, what about as a solution? We build skyways between all of the buildings, so nobody ever has to walk on ground level again. This idea comes from, is it Illinois, Seattle? Can't remember, an American city, I've forgotten. And there's lots of videos online showing this approach being used in other places, that American city. So I embedded the videos into the board so we can actually flesh out the context for what we're doing. And then there's another frame here, which actually I left the students to explore in their own time, which included some more videos, some images, some text, showing that particular case study from America. Minneapolis, that's what it is. Links to podcasts about it. And there's a kind of, real balance there between very positive reviews and responses to some negative reviews and responses to that design idea, because the social inclusion it creates, problems with social exclusion that it created. So introduced the activity in the class in teams. So it was an online session in teams, going through those boards, and then we went out into breakout rooms. So the next set of frames down, going along here, is breakout activities. And I had pre-structured the breakout activities. So each breakout group had a frame, and it's pre-structured using a method that they're familiar with. So Donald Norman based method that we use. And in about 15 minutes, the students had really intense conversations. I dipped in and out of the breakout rooms, but also I could see it all happening on the Miro board all at the same time. So I could see the breakout groups and their little cursors and all the stuff happening and the stuff developing in these frames as they worked on them in breakout rooms. At the end of the breakouts, we brought them back, got the whole thing up, and with all the students together, went through what they put on the frames, as you might do in a real class, but this is so much more efficient. Okay. Plus, we don't have to get rid of this at the end of the lesson. It's there for us to keep permanently, and the students can refer back to it later on. Now, that actually was really successful. So I thought, well, let's carry that on in the next workshop. Come back to the board. So didn't have the problem of having to wipe all the stuff off the whiteboard. We came back to it, and then we did another set of breakouts using a couple of other methods there, looking at real or fictional people and how they would respond to this design idea. And you can see it. Same thing happened again. Students go into the breakout and they're working on these, doing personas and empathy maps. And I can see that happening. And then we bring them all back and we discuss what they've put. Okay. We didn't in this case, but we could have then gone on doing more work using this board later on in later sessions. It just worked brilliantly. And for me, so I said that this really fits with my teaching approach and what I'm trying to achieve in teaching really well. So I put a few notes there in red at the top right there. What I'm after here and what I'm seeing in this is, so student as producer, which is an idea from about 10, 15 years ago, is really powerful. The idea that students are contributors of knowledge and what they do in the teaching space really matters, and we need to value it more and then build on it. So we're getting students to do stuff here not just getting them to do it on a big piece of white paper and then say, yeah, that's fantastic, discuss it a bit and then lose a bit of white paper. We keep it there and we value it and we keep building on it. So that's really changing the students' position in teaching and learning, and actually showing, they're valued and what they do is really important, and actually we keep building on that. There's this idea called reflective practicum, which comes from the work of Donald Shern on educating the reflective practitioners. So how designers, architects, creative people operate and how they learn. So the idea that they're getting stuff down in a very visual kind of way, or a way in which people can look at it and then reflecting on it. And you've got these tight iterations of doing things, reflecting together, changing, doing things, reflecting together, changing. And this is that reflective practicum, and it just works brilliantly like that. And then the third thing is this well-scaffolded creativity. So I'm creating the scaffolding based on my experience, not in a completely deterministic way. So as the students work on stuff, we can get new ideas and very easily add new frames. Remember the templating? So each of these diagram types that we've got, these structures, I've got those as templates, so I can actually just instantly add them to the board, or the students can add them to the board. So we can extend very easily in a responsive way. So scaffolded creativity. Also, in this case, especially want to get the students to learn that technique of scaffolding creativity, of creating frameworks, being creative, being adaptive, and then standing back, reflecting. So that's really important. And this just fits that absolutely perfectly. And the results have been amazing. So the transformation we've seen in the students, it's just worked. Even more so in the next use we put this to, which was we've just taught this, Bo and I again. So we teach a module called Design Thinking for Social Impact. It's a master's module for the engineering department's humanitarian engineering masters. We teach it in a week. And so that's a kind of very different way of teaching. So what I did here was diagrammed the whole module from start to finish for the students on a Miro board. So you can see we've got a preparation phase. I'll move myself over here. So we've got a preparation phase over here with stuff for the students to do before the module starts, and that's got things like module goals, some background information, videos for them to watch, some readings. There's a resources section with books, and also some PDFs that are embedded into the board, so they can actually download them from the board or read them on the board. And all kinds of rich information. There's also a careers frame there, and I'm easily able to, especially that one, easily able to reuse these frames in other modules. So that careers one, that's just getting reused all over the place. I, for example, put in an interview, did a video interview with Naomi Kay from the Warwick Institute of Engagement, and embedded that in there and got that as a reusable content. So reusing this content is really easy. So we've got the preparation phase, rich set of resources, and there is an activity in there to do before they start the module for real, which is about ethics. So they do kind of some reading around ethics and thinking about it, and post something on there to say they've agreed with the ethics proposals, etc. And then we have here, so the original setup, number 5 here, this post-it note says, taught in a week, a frame for each day's materials and activities. So we've got the materials and the activities are inside each of these frames. Remember, this is infinitely zoomable. We've got frames within frames here. So it's not just videos for them to watch, things for them to read, but activities in there that they collaborated on, structured activities. And we've got that for the 5 days of the teaching there. And also below that, so the students work on design challenges, assessed activities in groups, and we, during each of those days, we're teaching for the whole day. Second part of the day, they're working on the design challenges. And you can see we start them off with just some initial ideas gathered in that frame. Okay, I won't talk about what comes underneath that. I'm just going to show you the rest of the structure there, 27 days until the deadline, just indicating that directly. And then the assessment deadline, it tells them about that. And there's some frames there with stuff to support them with the assessment. So that's the structure that I created. And I've got that structure as a template and can run that again at any time. But also got, if you have a look underneath, this is the stuff that the students have created. So remember I said about leaving space in the structure for students to go off and create stuff. And you can see that they've really gone with Miro and done lots of what we want them to do is trying out lots of design studies, lots of sort of deep dives into looking at specific designs and design challenges, and they're documenting that in the board. And their assessed work will almost certainly be Miro frames exported as PDFs, which is an easy thing to do. Feedback from those students, in terms of raw score, we got 4.89 out of 5 stars average. And feedback from the engineering department was that it was outstanding. So it worked. Really happy about that. Okay, so how are we doing for time? Right, I'm just going to whiz through this next example.
There's a couple of questions in Teams, Rob. I don't know if you've got time
Jim,
to
do you want to relay them to me quickly while I'm getting set up? For
yeah,
the next
indeed.
frame?
Just about how you present this to the participants. Do you do it via Teams like now and Zoom in, or would you expect the students to follow along with Miro? And just one side question: am I right in that last frame that you showed us, the engineering one? A lot of those ones aren't actually frames; they're just images of frames, aren't they?
Oh, so this is a screenshot of.
Yes.
Actually,
just to make that clear for anyone who thought that it was a bit lacking in detail. That was all.
That's the actual board there. So that was a screenshot of it.
Okay, sorry. Well, going back to that original question, how would you present it to students, Rob? Would you be zooming in more, or would you expect them to follow along on Miro?
So a mix of both. So there's bits of the workshop where I'm leading, and so I'm showing them the route through the what we're doing and setting the context. And then there's bits where it's very clearly, okay, so let's work on the board together now. And I'll stop sharing my screen and we go and work on the board like we did at the start of this session. But, in this one, we did it really, really fast.
Okay.
It's alternating between the two. Now, when you can take your time. So our sessions are 2 or 3 hours long. So we can take our time and do that in a more controlled way than we're doing here. So a bit
Maria's shared a useful tip, which you did mention earlier, but I haven't used, which is the presentation mode, and that can be useful.
Yeah, so I used that actually for introducing things.
Yeah, but that's a good way for us to see each of the frames, actually, so that is worth checking. And if anybody hasn't found it, it's bottom left.
I also like this frame list thing as well. That's nice.
That's a good tip. Yeah,
thank you.
Nice. Thanks, Rob.
Here's the next example. This is the one I'm working on now, setting this up for January. This is a module in the arts faculty that I'm teaching, designing changes. Similar kind of thing to the introduction to design thinking module, but I'm taking a different approach to laying this out. So actually what's happened here is visualizing the module in Miro has actually improved my learning design for it. And also actually doing that at a curriculum level and at a granular level with assessments as well. Visualizing it, collaborating, visualizing it in a way in which I've then got to explain it to other people actually really helps. So this is the latest innovation, which this is the actual board. This isn't a screenshot now. So we can see we've got a getting started section here, which we're going to cover right at the start, which is not all the content's in here. I'm still working on it. What are our goals? How will we work? What is a design study? So a design study is one of the sort of main things they're being assessed for, and then reflective essay. And then we've got the next row down is a briefing frame for each of the design studies that they've got to do, the design challenges. So they're going to do 4 design challenges, and I've got a briefing frame for each one of those with text and images and videos and stuff. Case studies for them to look at, and there's going to be a briefing frame on the reflective essay. Now, feedback from the students has been that they would like to be briefed on the assessment much more clearly right at the start. We've then got these two layers here. So this is the progression through the 10 weeks, roughly broken up into 2-week blocks. So intro and basics, describing designs, evaluating designs, 2 weeks for each one of those. Plus each week we're going to have a whole load of skill stuff, each fortnight, a load of skill stuff to do, which is going to be presented in there. Okay, so we're going to work on these design challenges and the reflective essay. Each week we're going to be doing stuff that's relevant to each one of those. And the blank frames, notice they're color coded again, are spaces where we can work on each of these design challenges in the essay and share ideas and do activities, applying what we learn in these bits. So these vertical sections are new learning that we're introducing over the 10 weeks. And then the horizontal bits is developing each of those design challenges and reflective essay. So that's what I'm building at the moment, and just getting all of the content and stuff into there for that. I should mention as well that the speed with which I can develop these is really, really fast once you get into it. Although one thing I do is make sure that large amounts of text, I've got them as Word files or as web pages as well, so they can be accessed in other ways. Okay, so that's again, really very different approach to teaching this, and I think that's actually going to be a much better way of doing it. Of course, remember that this is infinitely zoomable, so each one of those blank spaces, which is where we're actually going to be doing the work through the 10 weeks, we can zoom in and put loads of content in there and have lots of activities within them. But feedback so far, I've tested this out on some staff and students, and they like the structure, they like the way that's organized. They like the fact that it's giving that clear briefing that they can keep going back to at the start of the module. Okay, so we're going to go hands-on now. Any questions coming up about those learning design ideas? Somebody's put a frame in there. Okay, so just want to show you. Oh, I didn't lock that in place. Somebody's moving that one around. I'm just going to lock that and double lock it, which is what I should have done. So any of the stuff you put on the board, you can double lock, which means that nobody else can unlock it. So actually, I just got a frame here. I won't go into this. This is loads of different ways of using this. Lots of templates you can use that are built in or provided by other people to use it in project design, management, etc. All kinds of collaboration. Just the possibilities are huge. Okay, so let's do some delving into. We've only got 10 minutes left, so we're going to have to be really quick on this. So what I'm going to do here is actually just show you some of the principles and how simple it actually is. So apologies for this going really fast, but there's a lot to fit in. Right, in this first frame here, boards, teams, projects. So you've seen what a board is. A board belongs to a project. When you get a Miro account, you can set up multiple projects. There's a board link always top left there. Okay, so you can get to your list of projects and boards there. So you can see I've got academic technology, arts, faculty, design, Warwick, inspires learning. They're my projects, and each one of those contains boards. You set up a team. When you get an account, a teacher account, you set up a team and you can, oh God, what was it? 1,000 people you can invite into that team or something, I can't remember. So you can then configure the team. For some reason, I just decided to call my team Meerkat and have a Meerkat picture I had handy. Education plan, you can have 100 people in your team, not 1,000. It's a bit of an exaggeration. And then you can invite people to join your team. But remember, so they're people who've got Miro accounts, or you invite them when they get a Miro account. But remember that you can still get people to participate who don't have Miro accounts. That's the basic organization. So we've seen zooming in and out. You need to know that thing. One bit of advice is when I start laying out a board, I zoom to 12%. which means that I've got plenty of capacity to zoom in and in and in, add loads of detail. So 12% is a good place to start setting up your board. Okay, then organizing the boards into frames is a really key thing to do. Now, people who start using Miro without an introduction just miss this. The button for that is on the toolbar on the left there, and you can see I usually use 69 as a dimension for it because that fits nicely onto a screen. So organize into frames, move your frames around, use the frame list on the left to sequence things and get your structure in place. Easy to change the structure later on, add new frames in, move things around, that's not a problem. Okay, so then adding objects to frames, simple. So toolbar on the left hand side here has lots of objects. You can add shapes, you can use a pen kind of thing, text, arrows, cards, which are sort of more complicated structures with a title, and then you can put lots of detail in them, etc. Okay, there's also templates and apps and things you can add. We won't go into that just yet. You can then reposition them, resize, and rotate. There's a rotate handle just there. Change the color, whatever properties are appropriate. That little toolbar pops up when you select an object. Okay, here's a key thing for teaching, which is any object or frame or group of objects you can lock into place, but you have to do this twice. So select an object or a collection of objects or a frame, and the little menu will pop up, which looks like that. Click on the lock once. If you only click on the lock once, other people can unlock it. If you click on it twice, only the board owner can unlock it. That means you can lock teaching content into place and the students can't move it around. Key thing to know. Changing the color and opacity of things and how they sit on top of each other or behind each other, very much like PowerPoint or a system like that. We've seen frames. As you move stuff around, you'll see you get lines appearing that are cues to help you to align things very neatly. I love things to be neatly arranged. And then grouping objects, so you just drag around an object and click on the grouping symbol, and you've got a whole group that you can move as one together. Okay, so those basic kind of things help you to construct a board that's really neat and effective. So navigating, actually covered most of this already. So navigating, there's that little map at the bottom right. You've seen the frames list. Sharing, click on the share button, the big blue share button there, and there's lots of different share options, including this ability to get a board link, set a password if you're going to let people edit it, copy a board link, give them the password, and then they can get into that board. You can also set the start view, so when they first come to the board, they see a certain part of it. You can also, what I did at the start was link to a specific frame. So you give them the link, they click on it, and it goes to a specific frame to work on as well, which can really help students to get onto what they need to do quickly. Okay, almost there. Templates, uploads, embeds. So templates, really powerful. I mentioned there's loads of templates you can use. That's the template button on the toolbar there. Just explore that in your own time. There's so many. Sticky packs is a useful template, and just puts a pack of stickies. You use that at the start. A pack of stickies onto the board. You can embed images. You can cut and paste text and images, but also you can upload files. Now this one here is, I've embedded that as a PDF. Now I forgot that one shouldn't be locked. There you go. So that's actually a PDF. It's a little bit slow updating. So now we can actually page through that PDF on the board itself. There's an option there which actually extracts all the pages from the PDF and displays them on the board. Now, for example, you could embed a PDF onto a board and get the students to put post-it notes around it to review, assess it. Then almost finally, clicking on the apps button, which is this one, the three dots at the bottom of the toolbar, allows you to embed lots of things. There's a web page capture thing, so that is actually a whole web page captured and embedded into the board by just providing the URL. Paste iframe code for YouTube and other things that provide an iframe code. And then there's apps like mind maps, Kanbans, charts, diagrams. They're more kind of complicated things than templates because they have behaviors like this. And then some simple things like being able to put emojis and icons and that in. Oh, very finally, last bit is export options and things like that. So right at the top here, there's an export link, and you can save the whole board as a PDF, and it will put each frame onto a different page in a nice, neat way. Does it beautifully. Save the board as a template, reuse it, and there's various other options there. You can actually embed it into another web page, which I have done before, and it's okay. That's not bad. And of course, individual frames can be exported, and not as PDF for some reason, only as an image. So if you want a PDF done quickly, just save as PDF, and it will create a page in your PDF for each of your frames. Okay, so that is. Now, if you're hanging around for a few minutes, then you are welcome to come back to this board and go onto the play area 1 here, and just put loads of stuff on there and try it out. So go onto this frame, give you the link, and just play on there. We'll be here for a little bit if you want to try things out and ask questions. Whew. Okay, so that is a very fast introduction to Miro, both how I use it in teaching and some of the sort of techniques, principles. What you're going to find is if you just, it's very easy to use. So just start using it and explore that stuff and ask questions and talk to people. I'm happy to give people advice and help people with it anytime, because I enjoy it so much. Plus, we've got a bunch of students who are getting good at it. I can see stuff happening on the board now, so people are just experimenting there. Okay, doing it in a very free-form way, but remember, the thing that matters is structure.